it. This is the first event of Yidstock 2023, and we're thrilled to have you here. It's just, it's always so exciting, and we're off to a great weekend of events. How many of you are here for the whole weekend? All right, almost everybody. So awesome. It's going to be fabulous. I'm Susan Bronson. I'm the executive director of the Yiddish Book Center, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Christa Whitney, the director of our Wexler Oral History program. Christa launched this project about 13 years ago, I believe, when she was just a fellow here at the Yiddish Book Center. She's an alumni of our summer Yiddish program. She was a recent graduate from Smith College, and she came here and she had this idea that we should be collecting stories of people who could talk about their experience in the Jewish and Yiddish world, and that this might be something that we'd want to do as an organization. Well, here we are, 13 years later, and wow. Since that time, she and her team have collected more than 1,200 interviews, 1 to 2 hours long, from all over the world. All over the United States, Europe, Eastern Europe, Russia, Israel, Australia, South America, Mexico, and more. She's captured stories from the descendants of Yiddish writers, from cultural figures, from activists, from celebrities to ordinary people with important stories to tell. And the project makes all these interviews accessible on our website, and thanks to 2 grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, many interviews are transcribed and completely searchable, so you can really go down a rabbit hole and explore the collection. This archive is of great importance already. I mean, we rescued all these books, but these are people's stories, the kinds of stories you don't get from books, and they're going to only grow in importance over time. Today, we'll see a film made from an oral history interview and get just a taste of what the project has collected from musicians. And I know you're in for a big treat. So I'll bring you Christa without further ado, and we happen to decide to wear matching outfits today, so.
Shalom Aleichem. Well, it's a great honor to get to kick off Yidstock 2023. I know you all are all the real diehards. We're showing up for the opening event, so thank you so much for coming and for your attention. So today, we will be looking at materials that come from the Yiddish Book Center's oral history work, but we also are here to honor a really special person, Pete Sokolow, who went by the stage name Klezmer Fats. And if you don't know about him, well, you'll learn a little bit about him in the film that I'll show in a moment here. But I thought that, he's such a big figure that we wanted to have an event in honor of him because he passed away in the last year between last Yidstock and now. So Susan talked a little bit about what the Yiddish Book Center's oral history work is. I just wanted to invite you all, if you want to check out that rabbit hole, here is the URL. And there really are now over 1,300 of these interviews. The full interviews are up there. A lot of the material is accessible. Even if you don't know Yiddish, there'll be an index in English that will guide you through. You can search and really discover not just about Yiddish language, but also about a lot of things to do with Jewish history, identity, and culture. So I was thinking about how to present this film and this program to you all. I am not a musician, but I am an oral historian. So I thought that I would tap into my skills and give you all some questions. A big part of being an oral historian is thinking about questions. So I am offering you some questions to think about through the program today, and also, I hope, through the whole festival. So I'll just give you a moment to just read these questions. Okay, and we'll come back to them later. But without further ado, I just want to introduce Pete Sokolow. So we're going to watch a short film from him, which is built on an oral history that we conducted with him, and also a wonderful jam session that we had, a private jam session with him in his house, which was really an honor. Here are some of the basic facts about him. He really was a working musician his whole life. He's also was born into a musical tradition with a pretty well-known music teacher as a father. He started out on sax and clarinet, and then he switched over to and became really most well-known for piano, although he kept playing clarinet throughout his life. And he started playing in the Catskills in '58, so he is known, and you'll see he sort of thinks of himself this way too, as a bridge between generations. So he worked with some of the greats of the klezmer tradition from the early 20th century as they were sort of, their lives were wrapping up. So he got to study with these greats of an earlier generation, and then later in his life, he became a mentor and really that figure to a whole another generation. So without further ado, we'll watch this short film about Pete Sokolow.
They look at me like I'm some kind of a dinosaur. That's what I say to people I'm playing over here, listening to music for dinosaurs. Here I am, the original dinosaur. That's fine. I buy it. But there is an art to this. Maxie was art. Dave was art. Naftullah in his own way was art. I play with all these great people. I'm one of the last ones left. And yet I still doggedly hold on to this thing because I like that sound. I like the real sound. Die Sprache stammt von Russland, mein Baba von meiner Tates Zeit, geboren in Sibirien. Cheremchevo, das ist 80 Meilen Ost von Irkutsk, das ist neben Lake Baikal. Aber die Sprache stammt von Ukraine. My mother was 29 when she married my father. He was 40. Their relationship with religion was, there was no Shabbos. There was no kashrus there. They didn't observe anything at all. My grandfather, my mother's father, used to go to ball games on Yom Kippur, so he didn't want to know from it at all. This is my father's piano. It's like owning a Rolls Royce. He bought it in 1933 at a place called Powers Piano. I still have the bill. He paid $650 for this piano. It was originally built, according to the guy at Steinway, it was originally built in 1894. I used to sit under that piano at 3 or 4 years old and listen to him play those Gershwin things. While other piano teachers were getting 50 cents an hour, my father got $3 a half hour. Some of my father's pupils, one of them was Buddy Strauss, the son will come out tomorrow, that one. Alan J. Lerner, the lyricist, was one of my father's pupils. Bob Keeshan, Captain Kangaroo, was one of my father's pupils. And what he did was he taught the kind of 1920s post-ragtime kind of a style. He had records of black piano players. Fats Waller, my guy. I started reading the books. And from the books, I got, okay, I want to hear this one, I want to hear that one. Taught myself how to play like Fats Waller, of course. This was my calling. And I just jumped on it. When I was about 13, my father finally broke down and got me a clarinet. I had the clarinet, maybe 3 weeks. I was playing a full scale in a low register. I started playing songs. I learned songs very quickly. If you asked me to play my entire repertoire, at this point I must know 10,000 songs or more, all by memory. First I learned them on the sax and the clarinet, and then I sat down at the piano and I learned the harmonies too. I did my first bar mitzvah, I was nearly graduating from high school. The word club date is a euphemism for a country club type of a job. But as I say, it was a euphemism. What it really meant was weddings and bar mitzvahs. We played whatever American songs were popular at the time, some of the tunes even from My Fair Lady or shows a little bit earlier than that. Popular songs, guys like Tony Bennett or Sinatra was singing. When you got involved in this, and if you were going to go to the Catskill Mountains, you had to learn some Jewish songs. There was a book called the Kamen, K-A-M-M-E-N, which was a folio of partly Jewish, partly Hungarian, partly Polish, things like that. And I had this book like all the other guys did. So the first one came in book, yeah, da 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 da, yeah, da 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 dee da. That's an old Freilux. Now later on, I found out some of my older friends that I had made by that point told me, we saw a guy come on a job at a Cayman book, we knew he was an amateur. But we were amateurs, we were kids, we were just learning. The Catskill Mountains were not really the Catskill Mountains at all. They were all these pretty crummy little towns, and these places came alive during the summer because they were bungalow colonies, azach, they were a ton of bungalow colonies. And there were lots and lots of hotels. There must have been about 500 hotels. First place I played was an Orthodox hotel. I didn't know from nothing. Boy, was that a scare. I did not know very many, if any, religious people at the time, but there were religious people, many of whom had come over as Holocaust survivors. And they became an industry. A lot of those weddings that the Hasidim had were on weeknights. So you could make a full-time living in music. Not just the weekend jobs, which were the American and that kind of stuff, but by playing the Hasidic, you could also make a nice buck on the weekdays. And I became one of the busiest guys in that line. The kind of music that they thought of for dancing at weddings, chasanas, you know, at parties, had to do with the parshas that you would read for Od Yeshama B'Yarei Yehuda, you know, that they were playing for the bride and the groom. Od Yeshama B'Yarei Yehuda, U'v'chutzos Yerushalayim, Kol Sasen V'Kol Simcha, Kol Chasan V'Kol Kala. Od Yeshama B'Yarei Yehuda, U'v'chutzos Yerushalayim, Kol Sasen V'Kol Simcha, Kol Chasan V'Kol Kala. I was working with two older musicians. What they did for me was more than I can imagine. Ralph, the trumpet player and bass player, he sang pretty badly, but he sang all the Yiddish theater songs. Shteit Lebeltz, Shemet Lavuna, by me, Mr. Shane in Yiddish, of course, and a bissel Zun, a bissel Regen. So I got to learn all these songs very quickly. These were not in the Cayman book. These you had to learn, you know. Also, I was able to pick up the Yiddish words because that was my training ground in Yiddish. So I was not only learning the repertoire, I was learning the Yiddish language. And some of the things that people talked about in the Yiddish culture, I learned about not at home, because my parents didn't want to know from it. I learned from the people in the Catskills who were the guests at those hotels. Das Leben vergeht uns kein Hoffnung ist als nicht du. Mazel ist scheint amul für jeden gut nicht von mir. The first time I ever heard a Bulgar must have been off a Dave Terrace record. I got some Dave Terrace, a friend of mine made a tape and I copied that tape. And I learned a bunch of things off that. So all of a sudden I had a small inkling of what the Klezmer thing was. Then when I played with Dave, I was 19. Most of the things that he played were not his real European Freilich and Bulgar material. Most of it was the Yiddish theater stuff. But of course, Dave was Dave. He takes a look at me and says, I am teacher of clarinet. All the best players come to me. In other words, get down on the floor and lick my boots. I would be playing like kind of harmony parts. I kind of laid back because I was afraid of this guy. But he would play and these pearls would come out. I became Dave's regular keyboard player. I was his last one, his last regular keyboard player. Imagine being able to play with, like Louis Armstrong, you know. Dave Terrace was Louis Armstrong. He was a pioneer. The Epstein boys were 4 brothers. These guys played Jewish. They were my introduction to klezmer. Chai, the first one, his nickname was Chiswick. Played the saxophone in the real old-fashioned style with a big vibrato. Sounded like a truck starting up. Then there was Willie, who played the trumpet. He was a good trumpet player, Willie. And Julie, who played the drums. But the king of that family was the oldest brother, Max. Maxie said to me, you know, kid, you play good clarinet. Very good. But you have to understand one thing. The dreidlach, meaning the ornaments, put those little curls and those little extra, what we call the dreidlach, you know, are there to enhance the melody, not the other way around. In other words, if you lose the melody, it's a dead issue. There's no real improvisation going on in klezmer music. There isn't. It's a straight dance tune because the customer does not know. No. You know, people don't even know what you're playing. Well, you're playing licks, that's all. You're playing a... It could be anything. That's moving, that's the song. That kind of thing is what these people taught me. And I was lucky that I had the opportunity to do it because here I was, at that time a young fellow in my mid to late 20s. These guys were already 60 or whatever. They were teaching me gratis. I didn't have to go to them for lessons. They were right there. I was learning it on the job. And being that they approved of me and they liked me, they thought that I was talented. Can't go wrong with that. Maxie liked to play these things a little bit slower than most people did. The music that had been klezmer, they were old people. People who had come over in 1890s, 1900s, 19-teens or something like that. Those people were already old. By the time that I came into the business, nobody wanted to hear it anymore. It was just about gone. People thought of klezmer as being the music of the destroyed race. After all, European Jewry was practically destroyed. And the klezmer was a reminder of that. Israel was the new, hopeful, upcoming Hatikva. This is the coming place to hope. And their new music was a music simplified that brought new hope to people. Listen to this. Atza alinu, watza alinu, watza alinu, which is not nah, that sounds too old-fashioned. That's grandma's music. You know, the klezmer revival is old. It started in 1978, 79, 80. That's 30-odd years ago. 35 years. Henry Sapoznik, we managed to get together somehow. And he brought over some of his friends, and they brought me some recordings and asked me to talk about them. I played them some of the stuff that I had. By that point, I had a few of the Dave Terrace things. They played me all these naftulas, and I picked up a bunch of recordings of that. So I started to learn some of the stuff that was before my time yet. When he got the idea for Klez Camp, I was one of the first ones he ever told about it. He wanted to make a seminar out of the thing to teach young, aspiring Jewish musicians how to play the style. That caught me right away. I was the first clarinet teacher in Klez Camp in 1985. These were American kids. It seemed to me that much of what they were doing sounded like a caricature of the music. It didn't have the flavor of the real thing. But I learned, to my dismay, people wanted a caricature. They didn't want the real flavor. The real flavor was too old-fashioned for them. It's only guys like me, we're the only ones left, and I'm one of the few that's left now at all, because almost all those guys I had up in Klezmer are dead now. I feel that there should be a place where authenticity should be one of the characteristics of the music. I have always said that when rock and roll comes in contact with any other form of music, rock and roll eats up the other music. Rock and roll is the dominant force in music and has been for 50 years now. I can't believe it myself. I am not interested in turning it into a different kind of a thing than it really is. For some reason or other, it doesn't behoove people anymore to be authentic. If bluegrass can be played authentically and have a huge audience, people come and listen to it from everywhere. What's the matter with the klezmer? For some reason or other, it's not hip to be authentically Jewish. Why is our music, people say, it's too old. It's not my way of thinking. I've invented it myself. In other words, the klezmer music, of course, is a klezmer style and tunes and things. And the Fats is, I put Fats Waller into it.
That's Pete. So I wanted to show you all, to sort of extend these questions to some other people in other generations. I want to show you a few more clips from the Oral History Project. The first person I'm going to show, this is a very short clip from someone that you all might know, Michael Winograd. He's a pretty big name on the Jewish music scene today. And I wanted to be sure to show him because he and Pete actually collaborated on Pete's last artistic effort, which was Terrace Band, where they worked together to honor Dave Terrace and his influence. So that's the two of them together. And I just want to play this little clip from Michael.
What always excites me is that I work with musicians who are multi-generational. Yes, my trio is made up of people who are under 33 years old, but I feel like that is important. That I was fortunate to be around in a time where I have that link to things, and that I get to regularly perform with people who have experiences that aren't necessarily readily available these days to younger musicians because the times are different. And in other scenes, other musical scenes, you might not get to do that so often. You may only get to spend time and play music with your contemporaries as opposed to people from another time, people of other scenes, you know, people who are older than you, people who are younger than you. Along with all those people, I get to teach people who are younger than me. So it's pretty cool.
So I think it's really interesting that you're starting to hear, even from Michael, who's obviously a lot younger than Pete, some of that same talking about he was a link, right? He got to work with Pete. So I wanted to offer just another pair here. of another towering figure in this world who also died much too soon, Adrienne Cooper. And if you don't know her, you should definitely look up her work. She was some people called her a Yiddish diva, one of the Yiddish divas. She was an amazing singer who came again from a family of musicians. And we heard about Klezmer in the short film from Pete, so she was one of the co-founders of Klezmer. And this interview she gave actually, just within a year before she passed away. And so at the end of our oral histories, we always like to ask people if they have an eitzah or a piece of advice. So this is Adrienne's advice to younger generations.
What I'd like future generations to know is that this culture belongs to them, that they have a right to take it, to explore it, to create something of their own in it. There is a potentially very destabilizing kind of experience in not knowing language, in not being able to possess a set of skills and a fluency that makes them feel secure and that gives them the right to participate. But I really hope that they'll be kind of bold and fearless, that Jewish culture and Jewish literacy and Yiddish culture and Yiddish literacy is hard come by. It's work, and because we don't live in a Yiddish land, right, in a full environment, for an adult who's smart and fluent and spontaneous, there is an awkwardness to expressing oneself, to feeling competent, to feeling brave about representing this culture. But the only way that it's going to persist is in that courage. And it's a lot to ask of people. But they have every right. And in a way, they have a responsibility if they want to take that on. And I wish for them that kind of courage and recklessness, to just throw themselves at it and to own it, because the culture needs them. There is no Yiddish land. There will be no Yiddish culture makers after a certain point in time who were born in a fully functioning Yiddish world. And it is a crazy project to try to live and create something of this culture. But there are all kinds of sources for receiving it and for participating. And it's a generous community. So, people will continue to be invited in. The project is hard, but I think that it fits the project of Jewish life. What I love about Yiddish culture, what I love about modern Jewish culture is its Golistikheit, is its off-balance quality. I think there's an enormous opportunity to live in that modesty where you're not, culturally dominant, and where the culture needs your energy and needs your desire and needs your participation.
So one thing I just want to mention that I noticed as I was putting this together, that all of these oral history clips I'm showing you were actually recorded either at Klez Camp or Klez Canada. So it's if you don't know about these festivals, they're kind of like workshops, right? It's like where this intergenerational transmission and learning is happening. So I think it's pretty cool that we've been able to go into those spaces and, in the case of Klez Camp, which isn't around anymore, go into those spaces and have people talking about these issues and their own journeys and their work actually within the context of such a rich sort of creation and transmission of the culture itself. So next I'm going to go to Adrian's daughter, Sarah Mina Gordon. So Adrian Cooper was a third-generation Yiddish singer in her family. Sarah's the next generation. She's a performer, a teacher. She fronted the rock band Yiddish Princess, and she continues to be really dedicated to creating new Yiddish culture, and she designs and leads Yiddish cultural programs for people of all ages, and she is one of the founding organizers of sort of, after Klez Camp closed down, Yiddish New York emerged as sort of same time of year. A lot of the same people are involved, and so here is a clip from her oral history, which was recorded at Klez Canada.
When I was a kid at Klez Camp, one of the things I really remember were the first children's programs activities there that happened was that Barbara Kirschenblatt Gimlet had a junior folklorist sheet. It was like dittoed. I have it somewhere. No, Xeroxed. It wasn't dittoed. And basically, like, we were let loose in the lobby with this sheet to ask people questions. It said, what were the remedy? What would you do if you got a cut? What would you do if just lots of things like, what would you do if you felt sick? What would you do? Tons and tons of stuff. Where, and in the beginning, what's your name? Where were you born? How old are you? And we were like let loose. And I remember I talked to Pearl Sapoznik. I spoke with Meyer Kirschenblatt, like all of these amazing people who lived in shtetls, who had these actual things. I learned all about cupping, about bunkus. I mean, I learned about peeing on cuts and, very kid stuff, wrapping things in spider webs as bandages. I learned a huge amount about life in Eastern Europe before the war. And then a few years ago, I was really thinking about how I really wanted to do something like that again as the director of the children's program at Klez Camp. And I couldn't because that knowledge is all secondhand, or if you get it, then it's fine, but it's not the same. And that's really changed. At David Rogoff's funeral, I think, Chana Yachnes came up to me, and I'd been weeping and weeping and weeping, and like Mr. Rogoff was such a huge part of his amazing voice. Like, I just remember him, in Yivo at Klez Camp, like he was part of my life. And Chana Yachnes walked up to me and was like, and she's an intense person. So she said, do you feel it? Do you feel it? Do you feel the weight on your shoulders? Do you feel it? And I was like, it's just like weeping about, everything. But it was the first time that someone basically said, like, that's yours now. Like, you have that. Because the community is changing and because elders aren't elders anymore. And if I'm teaching Yiddish song, and if, Asya Weissman is teaching Yiddish, and, other people are teaching, it's just, it becomes another thing. And it's inevitable, clearly, that, as we get older, other people, die, and as other people get older as well. But I think that that's really, for me, is the biggest change. You feel it. I feel it. The weight. Just hope that your shoulders are strong enough and you keep going.
So I'll just end with one other person who you actually heard as you were walking in, the great Eleanor Visa. Again, probably someone you've heard of if you're in these circles. She works in all kinds of media, often at Yidstock as a singer, but does all of these other things as well. And I just want to close with some of her reflections. Again, this is recorded at Klezmer, Canada.
Well, I mean, here we are in Klezmer, Canada, and I don't know if I've ever seen so many young people in this kind of Yiddish, Jewish cultural situation. So it's very exciting, it's very thrilling, and I think there is I think there is a revival. I don't know how big it is, I don't know what's going to happen to it, but there's a lot of groovy people who are speaking Yiddish now, and it kind of ain't your Bubba's Yiddish anymore. There's a lot of new work, new songs in Yiddish, and they're good, and they're written by contemporaries of mine and younger people than me, and most of the people here are now younger than me. And well, it's like Yiddish is it's like a fever, really. And if you can contaminate somebody with a Yiddish fever, you can sort of. I feel like you can really turn people on. And I mean, that's kind of what I want to do, and it turns me on. So it's a communicative. It's the most expressive language. I mean, I hate when people say that, but it's the most expressive language I know. Let's put it that way. Maybe there are a plethora of others that are also, but the notion of its diminutive qualities and its poeticness and its onomatopoeic qualities, and I mean, Michael Wex is the guy to talk to more about that, but I feel like I own the language, and I think there's something about people want it. I don't know, they want it. They want to be able to speak it. So I think something's happening here. I think the music has really turned people on, and it's really inclusive. It's really inclusive. So if you can start to learn how to express yourself, who doesn't want to do that? And Yiddish is so expressive that, I mean, if you can do it in Yiddish, do it. So I think it's a hopeful situation for the future, but it's an exciting situation for the present. It's really fun now to see it like bubble and live, and that it's not just for a generation that's exiting.
Great. Well, I'm going to put these questions back up here, and we have a few minutes, and I thought if anyone's hearing, we've just had some story time with people who are involved in this scene, so I thought maybe we could, if any of you have any thoughts that you want to bring out to this group and this community that we're in this weekend. Yeah? They've changed their name to the Workers' Circle. Historically, it was Arbeiterring, which was translated as Workmen's Circle. Yeah. Did you have a question that you wanted to? No, I have a statement. Great. Great. I'll just repeat that for anyone who couldn't hear, which is an invitation to go check out workerscircle.org. They have courses. Yiddish Book Center also has online courses, and there are a lot of resources, especially in the last 5 years, to learn Yiddish online. So, yeah. I don't know I don't know historically the connection between the Arbeiterring and the Verband, so I'm not going to comment on that. Anyone? Right, yeah, they were associated with slightly different political orientations, so yeah. Well, we don't see it as a competition. We don't see it as a competition. There's room for all the Yiddish organizations to teach Yiddish, and we hope there will be more than enough students to do this. Great. Just a comment about going to Eastern Europe and with the Workers' Circle and hearing Yiddish in Eastern Europe. Okay, well, maybe one more question? Sure. Yeah, so that Yiddish on Duolingo is one of the exciting new developments in the Yiddish language world, and we're just excited for all that's going on in the Yiddish world, and we hope that we are a part of that too. And so I just want to thank you all again for coming to Yidstock. I hope you'll carry some of these voices with you this weekend. Thank you.